I was doing this research for my own brands, and I was planning to keep it to myself. But then I thought, fuck it. I'm a man of the people. So here it goes. Starting your cannabis brands in the wrong state can cost you millions of dollars. It'll give you setbacks, lawsuits, possibly even going bankrupt. You'll basically be making less than a McDonald's worker by going through all this bullshit. So you might as well start in the right state, become profitable, and scale from there. It's like choosing $1 million in profit or $1 million in debt. What would you rather have? I've seen people I know lose 5 to 10 years of their life and their business simply because they chose the wrong state to set up in. Some states will tax you to hell. Other states just aren't even worth it population-wise. Then there's other states that make the licensing protocols so steep, you need multi-millions of dollars to even get in there. And then other states have fucked up social equity programs. So here are the top 15 states to start a cannabis brand from worst to best. One of the worst states that I'd consider getting into would be Oklahoma. Oklahoma is number 15 on this list. So a few of the reasons why I don't like Oklahoma: it's got a low population of only 4 million. It's got an easy barrier to entry. It's basically $2,500 you get a license. So it means that anybody and everyone can get a license out there. So now you have an oversaturation of licenses. You have incompetent license operators, and you have a race to the bottom because everyone's just trying to survive. So they're going to keep undercutting prices. It's not a healthy market to be in. So don't even focus on that as a brand. Maybe if you're buying bulk, you got some good suppliers out there, that's your prerogative. But even for the grows out in Oklahoma, there's so many issues with humidity that it just doesn't make sense to grow out there. Even if it's indoor, you can get some good indoor with the right grow if it's built out right, with the right team, the right facility. But it's few and far between. And you don't have the population or the experienced workforce to get qualified employees to run these grows. So that's the bigger thing. You're going to always be limited by your employee pool. So basically, I'd steer clear from Oklahoma if I had a brand. The next one on the list is North Carolina. This is number 14. And there's actually pros and cons to this. So North Carolina is actually a great state to launch a THCA brand under the hemp laws. However, if we're talking about cannabis laws, which this list is about, it's not so great of a state. The reason being is there's no THC infrastructure. It's really just the hemp infrastructure. However, North Carolina is one of the leading states in the THCA movement. So if you plan to have a THCA component to your brand, North Carolina is actually a great state. And if this was a list of THCA states, it would be towards the top, closer to number 1. Next is number 13, Texas. And Texas has no cannabis infrastructure, no THC infrastructure. They have a medical program, but it's super rigid and hard to get involved with. However, the plus to Texas is it's wide open for hemp and THCA. So if you plan to have a THCA component to your brand, Texas is actually one of the best states to be in for THCA. And that's because they have a huge population and a thriving hemp program where all these smoke shops, they have over 8,000 smoke shops selling THCA. However, this video is about cannabis THC programs, and since Texas doesn't have that in place, there's other states in the country that are much better for a cannabis brand. Next would be number 12, Georgia. And Georgia has a medical program, but it's very limited. They have restrictions on THC levels, and it's just hard to participate in. However, Georgia is similar to North Carolina and Texas, where it does have a thriving THCA hemp component. So if your brand has a hemp side of things, a THCA side of things, Georgia is actually one of the best states to be in alongside Florida, Texas, and North Carolina. But for cannabis, THC, Georgia isn't a great state to be in. Coming in at number 11 would be Florida. The reason Florida is low on this list is because it's a medical only program. There's no recreational side, and it's a high monopoly as well. It's a huge barrier to entry. It's one of the hardest states to get a license in. And the reason why is you need multi-millions of dollars to get the license. They have a cap on the licenses. And then there's also a component to the law where you have to own from seed to sale. You have to own the stores, the grow, the manufacturing facility, and you can only sell your stuff in your own stores. So they have a very strong hold on the market, a monopoly. So if you are a brand that can work with one of these license holders, such as Doja, Wizard Trees, there's a handful of other California brands out there, they're actually killing it. And the reason why is because it is a high barrier to entry. It's hard for a lot of people to get in there. So the license holders that have a foothold in the market out there and they're willing to do licensing partnerships with established brands, these are some of the most profitable states to be in, is Florida. So it would be higher on my list if it was easier to get into, but since there's such a low amount of licenses, getting a licensing deal in Florida is a bit trickier than in states such as New York or California. However, in Florida, they're wide open for hemp. So if you have a THCA component to your brand, this is another great state to be in. Not only is the population well over 20 million people, but it's a thriving market for hemp and THCA products. Next state on the list is Pennsylvania, coming in at number 10. And Pennsylvania has a good chunk of population, and it's actually a good market to be in. However, it's very hard to get into it with a licensing deal as a brand. There's limited license holders. There's a vertical integration component there. And all the license holders are usually multi-state, multi-million-dollar brands. And those are tricky partnerships to be with. They may or may not even want to have an independent brand as a partner. And if they do, they might not even have the right quality of weed, the right genetics. And it's going to be very hard working with them with a large corporate structure the way that is. So Pennsylvania is still low on the list. However, if you do have an opportunity to get in there, you'll get a lot of brand recognition, and it most likely will be profitable for you if you can find the right partnership. So number 9 is Colorado. And this could have been a little bit lower on the list because I'm not a big fan of this market. And yes, it's most popular because it was one of the first legal states out there. However, it's not that profitable. Their population is low. There's only 6 million people there. There's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of price battle in there. So for me, I just plan to steer clear of Colorado, and they also don't have a good THCA program either. Number 8 is going to be Illinois. And this is actually a very tough state to get into because there's a huge monopoly from multi-state operators there, including price fixing. So they're price fixing the wholesale cost of pounds at an unbelievably high rate, which actually causes the unlicensed market to thrive out there. And it's a monopoly with MSOs. And I'm not a big fan of being a direct partner with an MSO unless they're more of an independent MSO. But the ones in Chicago are heavy into corporate. So I just steer clear of Illinois. The competition's too high. It's an inflated market. It's not even a real market because of the price fixing. And you can get some good licensing partnerships there. And if you establish one, you'll have a good market share because of brand awareness. However, I'm not even going to waste my time with Illinois, at least not now. Number 7 on the list is Massachusetts. And they have a thriving cannabis program. However, their population is kind of on the small side at only 7 million. And the other thing, just from insider knowledge, I know a lot of growers out there, they have huge canopy space, hundreds of thousands of square feet of canopy, which means it's a double-edged sword. There's going to be lower cost of goods because there's so much production there, so you'll get your pound prices lower. However, there's going to be higher competition, and eventually there's going to be some price wars going on. So with a low population like that, it's like crabs in a bucket. Everyone's going to be fighting for those same customers. So it's another one that if there's a good opportunity and it's easy for me to get in there, I'll consider it, but it's not one of the top ones that's on my radar. Number 6 is Minnesota. And this is a bit higher on the list because it's such a new state. So there's still some opportunity there. However, it's got a low population, slightly over 5 million people. So that's going to be the limiting factor, the glass ceiling. And I try to stay away from low population states unless there's a reason to be there. And if you have a personal connection to Minnesota, you live there, you know the market real well, you've already been establishing your brand there, then it makes sense to stay focused there. But if you're just looking for a new state to jump into, there's much better opportunities in other states. Number 5 on this list would be New Jersey. And New Jersey has a 9.5 million population, so it's not huge, but it's still big enough. And the other plus to New Jersey, it's geographically next to New York. So you're gonna have a lot of spillover, a lot of people traveling through New Jersey to get to New York, vice versa, coming over the bridge, coming through the tunnel to get from New York to New Jersey. So having a presence there isn't a bad idea if you have a good partnership. However, the downsides to New Jersey, which I know personally just through some connections I have out there, is it's a small market. So there's not a lot of producers, there's not a lot of cultivators, there's not a lot of manufacturers. Pricing out there is inflated, especially because of the lack of cultivators. For instance, distillate prices out there, if you're going to be doing a vape brand or something, distillate prices are some of the highest in the country out there. Whereas here in California, a liter of distillate is high right now between 12 to 1600, and that's super high on 1600 here in California. However, in New Jersey, distillate prices right now are from 8,000 up to 12,000. So almost a 10x increase from California's prices. So that alone right there is super cost prohibitive for your cost of goods. So New Jersey right now, I'm just sitting back waiting for the right opportunity to enter that state. And I have a few friends that have facilities about to come online, and I'll consider getting into the New Jersey market through a friendly partnership with someone that I'm already comfortable working with. However, steer clear from the multi-state operators over there. They may not have the right genetics, the right quality, and working with the multi-state operators, the corporate ones, they'll fuck you over quick. So you want to really have quality partnerships with people from this industry and try to steer clear from those corporate multi-state operators. So number 4 on the list is Ohio. And Ohio has a population of just under 12 million people. It's an emerging state with new laws that are coming online, so legalization's forming. However, it's still in the early stages. So there's not really a clear establishment of manufacturers, distributors, and even the retailers yet. So it's gonna be some time. However, I think that market's gonna actually be a good market to be in. The 3rd on this list is Michigan. And Michigan only has 10 million people. However, it's a strong market to be in. Last year, it led the country in cannabis sales per capita. However, it's very competitive. And this year, average pricing is dropping. So the average consumer pays less at the counter. However, volume is increasing. So Michigan is going to probably get saturated at some point where volume doesn't keep increasing and actually starts decreasing as prices decrease as well. We'll probably start seeing that either this year or next year. So Michigan can kind of go either way, but I feel like it's a solid state to still have a presence in because it is on the forefront of one of the top 5 states for legal cannabis. Coming in number 2, the second best state to be in for a cannabis brand is New York. And we all know New York is leading retail state per capita. It's got a ton of concentration of people in a small area, and they're all ready to buy stuff. So New York's population is just shy of 20 million people, and it's in such a small footprint that a lot of people in a small place means you're going to have high volumes of sales. The other plus that I really, really like about New York is they have it written into their law that the retail stores will get flagged if they don't pay their invoices to brands. And this is actually a situation in California that's starting to get a little out of hand. And New York got ahead of that by putting this law in place where the retailers, if they don't pay your invoice when it's due, so their first warning they get is they go on a list that's sent out to all the license holders in the state that says these people are bad at paying their bills and only give them COD products, meaning they got to pay cash on delivery. Do not give them net terms. And so by going on this list, it's detrimental for these retail stores. It makes it harder for them to do business. So they want to keep their name clean. They're going to make sure to pay their bills on time. And if they actually get on that list and still don't pay their bills or have infractions with their payments, they risk losing their license. So this is a huge, huge, huge plus if you're a brand in this market, whereas California doesn't have that protection. So I'll jump into California's strategy in a bit, but here in New York, that's a huge win for brands. The other thing is New York has a huge appetite for quality weed. So they also like cheap weed too, but if you have a quality brand, it's one of the key states to be in. Really build your presence in New York. The other plus about New York is they have a Type 3 brand license. And this means that as a brand, you actually get your own license. And it's a very easy barrier to entry. You don't need to own or rent a location to attach the license to. It's basically, you're just paying a couple $1,000s to get your license, and you're established with the state as an actual licensed brand. And now the licensed processors and cultivators can work with your brand license. So this is a really great step that New York put in place that I haven't seen any other states do yet. So coming in at number 1 is California. And California is going to be a hard state to beat out of this number 1 position for a few reasons. First, it's got the highest population out of all the states. It's almost at 40 million people. So it's basically double the population that New York has. California is also synonymous with good cannabis. So it's only natural that it's going to be one of the leading states. That's what it's known for. It's what it's always been known for. And it's true. A lot of the great cannabis comes from California. Yes, there's the argument that indoor is indoor, regardless of what state you're in. However, there's a few details that California has a leg up on, even if you're doing indoor and comparing an indoor state to an indoor state. Some of those reasons are that California has been growing weed legally, even through the medical days, since 1996. And even before that, there was a clandestine operation of cannabis. And that was like really, really where it was like, you had to be hide in the shadows type of thing to do it. So over the years, it's not like that anymore. And California's emerged as the leader in global cannabis. So to be here in California with your brand is almost a must. It's a non-negotiable. Get your brand on some California shelves. You don't have to be statewide. You don't have to be in hundreds of stores. Just get your brand in some of the key stores and show that you have a presence in the number 1 cannabis state in the world. And yes, California has its issues. It's high taxes. Also, the stores, there's an epidemic going on right now where a lot of the stores don't pay their invoices. They don't pay their bills. However, the fix and the workaround to that is to just not work with those stores. The good thing about the state is it's got so many retail stores. The Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, works heavily in your favor. And the reason being is that 80% of your profits are going to come from 20% of the stores. So the trick to navigating California is identifying those key stores, ideally COD stores, that pay on delivery. You don't have to deal with net terms, and just lowering your store count. So only working with the stores that pay their bills or that pay COD, and then couple that with stores that have good foot traffic. So you know you're going to have good sell through. And that's my strategy here for both my brands in California. And it's been proving to work well. And it's better to be in a lower store count that you're actually getting profitable from versus being in a higher store count and having to chase down payments from a lot of these stores. So remember, it's not about the number of stores you're in. It's about how many of the stores that you're in pay their bills. So when you focus on that, California's a winning state all around. So if you're interested in getting your licensed cannabis brand started in any of these states without having to own a license, click the link below. I made a free step-by-step course on how to go about doing that and how to get started.